Arrogant doctor mocks poor patient, freezes when her lawyer brother steps in. It was just another ordinary morning in the city hospital, nurses rushing, patients waiting, doctors barking orders, but no one paid much attention to the young woman slowly walking through the front doors. Her clothes were faded, her eyes hollow, and her steps unsteady. She clutched her stomach, clearly in pain, but what caught people's attention wasn't her suffering. It was her silence. She didn't scream, didn't demand. She just walked to the front desk and whispered, "Please, I need help." The receptionist barely looked up. A glance at her worn-out sneakers and cracked hands told them everything they thought they needed to know. Poor, powerless, probably another burden on the system. She was told to wait, and wait she did, for hours. When her name was finally called, she was met by Dr. Mitchell, polished, confident, and cold. He looked her up and down, smirked, and said loud enough for others to hear, "Let me guess. No insurance? You people always show up expecting a miracle." The nurses shifted uncomfortably, but no one said a word. She tried to speak, but he cut her off. "Unless you've got someone with real money or actual importance, you're wasting my time." The girl flinched but didn't fight back. Instead, she slowly stood, her face pale with pain, and walked out of the room. What no one knew, what Dr. Mitchell never saw coming, was that the quiet girl he just humiliated had someone behind her, someone powerful, someone who would turn his world upside down, and the next time they'd meet, he wouldn't be the one in control. Her name was Lena Carter. She wasn't anyone famous. She didn't have followers or fans. She didn't wear designer clothes or carry the latest phone. In fact, most days, she barely had enough to pay the bus fare to work. But if you looked past the faded hoodie and the worn sneakers, you'd see someone extraordinary. Lena had lived a life that would have broken most people. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was just 16. One moment they were driving home from church, laughing about what to make for dinner. And the next, their car was crushed by a drunk driver who walked away with nothing but a scratch. Lena never got over that day. She didn't have time to. Overnight, she became a mother to her two younger siblings, Ben and Maya. At 16, while her friends were worried about prom and parties, Lena was working at a local diner, folding napkins, washing dishes, and rushing home to help Maya with her homework. She gave up everything, college, social life, even sleep, to keep her little family together. And somehow, through all the hardship, she never complained. Not once. She worked 2 jobs, waitressing during the day and cleaning offices at night. Every dollar went toward rent, groceries, and school supplies for her siblings. She skipped meals. She patched the holes in her shoes with tape, and when she got sick, she told herself it could wait. She didn't have time or money to be sick. But this time, it wasn't just a cold. It started with sharp pains in her stomach, then waves of nausea, then faintness so intense she had to sit down on the sidewalk during her shift. Her manager gave her a disapproving look, but Lena smiled through it. She always smiled. Pain was something she had learned to carry. She tried home remedies, took over-the-counter pills, and drank gallons of water. But the pain kept growing. Still, she pushed through, until she couldn't anymore. That morning, as she lay on her bed clutching her side, sweat pouring down her face, Maya, just 13, stood beside her crying, saying, "Please, Lena, just go to the hospital." So Lena went. Not because she believed she'd be helped, but because her little sister was begging her to. She dug into the emergency envelope, a stash of crumpled bills she'd been saving for rent, and took the bus alone. She didn't want the kids to see her like that. She walked into that hospital quietly, holding back tears. She wasn't expecting luxury. She wasn't even expecting kindness. All she wanted was to be checked, to make sure she wasn't dying. She wanted to be strong for a little longer, for Ben, for Maya. But instead of compassion, she was met with ridicule, with arrogance, with a doctor who saw her not as a patient but as a burden. And even then, Lena didn't yell. She didn't scream, didn't fight. She just nodded, turned around, and walked out the door, holding her pain like a secret. But what Dr. Mitchell didn't know was that Lena wasn't alone in the world. She had someone who had sworn to protect her no matter what. And he was already on his way. Dr. Mitchell had seen hundreds of patients that day, but Lena stood out to him, not because of her symptoms, but because of how unimportant she looked. To him, she was just another poor girl clogging up his schedule, someone who would take up time, ask for help, and give nothing in return. He didn't see a young woman in pain. He saw a nuisance, an inconvenience. When Lena stepped into the exam room, she quietly greeted him with a soft, "Good morning." She was clutching her side, her face pale, her body trembling from the pain she had tried to suppress all morning. But Dr. Mitchell didn't look at her. He didn't ask any questions. Instead, he sat down, looked at her chart, and let out a tired sigh. "No insurance, I'm guessing?" he asked, without making eye contact. Lena hesitated. "No, but I can pay something. Let me stop you right there," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "Every week, people like you walk in here claiming they'll pay later or just want a quick checkup and then vanish. You want real care? You bring real money." She blinked, startled by the cruelty in his tone. "Sir, I'm in real pain. It's been getting worse every day. Oh, I'm sure," he said sarcastically. "You probably Googled the symptoms last night and came in with a list of what you think you need. Let me guess. Appendicitis, right? Or maybe you think it's a tumor. That's usually the favorite." The nurse standing nearby shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between the two, but she said nothing. No one ever did. Dr. Mitchell didn't examine her. He didn't run tests. He barely touched her. He listened to her chest for half a second, scribbled a few notes, then handed her a small white prescription slip. "Over the counter. Anti-nausea meds, try those, and drink water, unless you're allergic to that too." Lena stared at the paper in her hand, confused. "But I've already tried." "I'm not running a charity, sweetheart," he snapped, standing up. "I have real patients to see." She stood there in stunned silence, unsure whether to cry or scream or simply collapse. But pride, the last thing she had left, held her upright. Dr. Mitchell turned to the nurse and muttered, just loud enough for Lena to hear, "These people always act like they're dying. Then next week they're back, pregnant or overdosed." That was it. Lena didn't say another word. She simply nodded, folded the prescription into her pocket, and turned to walk out the door. Her body screamed in protest, her vision blurred, but she kept her steps steady. She didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. As she stepped into the hallway, the lights above her flickered. Or maybe that was just her vision. Her heart pounded, and her knees felt like water. She found a bench near the exit, sat down, and pulled out her phone. She dialed one number. Her last resort, her safety net. "Hey, it's me," she whispered into the receiver, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want to call, but I think something's really wrong." There was silence for a moment. Then a voice answered, calm, steady, strong. "Where are you?" the man said. And that was the last thing she heard before her world went black. She slumped forward, unconscious on the bench. And within moments, everything began to change. The security guard noticed her first. Slumped forward on the bench, her body still. He rushed over, tapped her shoulder gently, then more urgently. No response. Her lips were pale, her skin cold and clammy. Within seconds, a call was made, and paramedics rushed in. The same hospital that had just dismissed her now scrambled to save her life. But it was too late for apologies. She was rushed to a different hospital, one that still had dignity in its walls. Doctors worked quickly. Her appendix had ruptured. The infection had started to spread. If she had waited any longer, she could have died. As they worked on her, her phone kept ringing in her coat pocket. One missed call, then another, until finally, someone answered. "Hello?" the man said, confused. "Where is she?" "This is her brother." The nurse on the other end explained everything. The collapse, the emergency surgery, the condition she was in. Silence followed. Not even a breath. Then the voice said calmly, "Text me the address. I'm on my way." When Jason Carter walked into the room, his presence was undeniable. Tall, confident, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit. His eyes scanned the room with quiet intensity, and when they landed on his sister unconscious in the hospital bed, something shifted in him. The calm was still there, but underneath, a storm had started. Jason wasn't just Lena's brother. He was a high-profile civil rights attorney, Known for his fierce courtroom battles and his relentless takedown of corrupt institutions, he had grown up in the same hardship as Lena, but he had chosen a different battlefield: law. He asked questions, took notes, recorded everything: the diagnosis, the previous hospital's name. The nurse's recollection of how Lena had arrived with pain had been ignored and had collapsed before help came. He thanked the staff and walked out, his jaw tight, his fists clenched, his mind already preparing a strategy. The next morning, Jason arrived at the first hospital, not as a grieving brother but as a man on a mission. He didn't yell, he didn't raise his voice. He simply requested a meeting with Dr. Mitchell and the hospital administrator. At first, Dr. Mitchell was dismissive, arrogant as ever. "Look, I see 100 patients a day," he began. But Jason didn't blink. He slid a folder onto the table. Inside, Lena's medical reports, a photo of her unconscious in the ER, witness statements from nurses, and a formal letter of intent to sue for medical negligence and discrimination. "I suggest you read this carefully," Jason said coldly, "because the next time we meet, it'll be in court." Dr. Mitchell went pale. The administrator's hands trembled. Jason stood, adjusted his jacket, and added, "You didn't just fail a patient, you nearly killed my sister. And I promise, I'll make sure everyone knows it." Within 72 hours, the story was everywhere. Local doctor accused of ignoring poor patient. Brother, civil rights attorney, takes action. News anchors repeated Jason's words. Social media exploded. Former patients came forward. The hospital, under pressure, placed Dr. Mitchell on immediate suspension pending investigation. Jason filed a formal complaint with the state medical board. He knew the system well, and he used it like a scalpel. Lena's case sparked a bigger conversation. How often are poor patients dismissed, overlooked, humiliated, simply because they can't afford to fight back? Only this time, someone did. Weeks later, Lena sat in her hospital bed, finally recovering. Maya brought her flowers. Ben sat beside her drawing cartoons. And Jason? He was there too. Not in a suit, not in battle mode. Just her brother. "I didn't want to make a scene," Lena whispered. "I just wanted someone to listen." Jason smiled, took her hand and said, "You don't ever need to suffer in silence again. You're not alone." She looked at him, eyes glassy with tears. "I thought I was small." "You're not small," he replied. "You're stronger than you know. But even the strongest need someone to stand behind them." As the camera slowly pulls back, Lena laughs softly for the first time in days. Her world, once dark and cold, is filled with light again. Never underestimate the quiet ones, because behind their silence might stand a warrior ready to shake the world.